Hi, I'm Melissa Rose.
I'm Lonnie Sumrold.
And I'm Shane Honpunnett, and today we'll be presenting a hot topic presentation on access to technology.
So this is our table of contents, and each page is a different one of our driving questions that we formulated to better understand the issue of access to technology. So we're going to start with page number 1, which is defining our terms. Defining access and technology. GoGuardian describes technology as digital tools, including both hardware devices and software programs. In my interview with Winley, a first grade teacher at Emblem Academy, she listed commonly used technology at her school as IFPs, which are interactive flat panels, assistive technology for deaf and hard of hearing students, Chromebooks, student-generated weekly school-wide broadcasts, multiple educational apps available to students through the online platform Clever, and a Google platform for technology. So this includes Google Classroom, Google Docs, Google Slides, etc. Now, GoGuardian describes equitable access to technology as all students having access to technology, regardless of their ethnicity, socioeconomic status, age, physical ability, or any other quality. Equitable access is fundamental for students to acquire the knowledge and skills they need to be digitally savvy citizens. Now that our key terms are defined, we can start to look more deeply into the issue of equitable access to technology.
Our second guiding question was, what is the impact of the inequitable access to technology? Overall, we found that unequal access to technology prevents educational equity. This is through something called the digital divide. So according to Moore, Stawanoga, and Vitali, the digital divide is the gap between people who have sufficient knowledge of and access to technology and those who do not. The digital divide is responsible for achievement gaps and is related to lower socioeconomic status and is detrimental to social and economic capital acquisition. We can see that the digital access achievement gap is larger for older students, and we can see that 8th graders without computer or internet access were about 2 years behind their peers who do have access. So what we see here is that the impact of inequity is that the Matthew effect continues to take effect.
After examining the impact of the digital inequity, we wanted to take a narrower look in the specific context of COVID-19. And so we decided to take a look at the effect that the pandemic had on access to technology. A Pew Research poll in 2020 found that 1 in 5 parents during the pandemic said that their children would likely not be able to complete schoolwork due to lack of internet access at home. And among lower income parents, about 40% of them said that it was likely that their children would have to use a cell phone to complete schoolwork due to a lack of access to devices and would likely have to use public Wi-Fi due to lack of adequate internet access at the home. Among these vulnerable groups, students who are Black, Hispanic, live in rural areas, or come from low-income households also make up a disproportionate percentage of the students who lack this access to technology. And in a more recent study in December of 2021, it was found that even after returning to schools, students in these aforementioned groups continue to fall further behind in math and reading, widening gaps further than even those before the pandemic. So the sort of lasting impact that COVID-19 has on our students continues even after students have returned back to the classroom from remote teaching.
So we wanted to, on a larger scale, talk about the barriers to equitable access to technology. And one of the major barriers is the conflating wireless technology to a wired connection. Like Shane was talking about, while students may have access to a smartphone or a wireless connection, it's difficult to apply for a job or for college or to do homework, for instance, on a mobile phone. This wireless technology is not a substitute for a wired connection, but it seems like recently that comparison has been made. Another barrier to equitable access is the digital divide. However, the digital divide that was once known as a factor of wealth is now a factor of education. According to the New Media Consortium, those who have the opportunity to learn technology skills are in a better position to obtain and make use of technology than those who do not. Essentially, those students who have access will continue to have access and grow in technology. And those students who do not have access will continue to fall behind in their lack of access. Finally, we noted that there is a lack of school support as a barrier for access to technology. Typically, this comes in the form of funding, where there are lack of funding to provide appropriate technology to its students. As well, there may be a lack of availability of resources from either the school or the district to support students as well.
After taking a look at the data that we've collected, as well as the sorts of barriers to equitable access, we also wanted to address how can we as individual teachers make a difference and help our students in our own classrooms. While there are nationwide and district-wide solutions, we wanted to find a way to address these issues on our own in our own classrooms with more actionable alternatives. One thing that we came up with was reaching out and learning more about our students, maybe conducting surveys to better understand student situations, and not assuming that all students can access online content that I may take for granted, such as YouTube or class websites. We also saw that many students rely on their mobile phones for completing schoolwork. So maybe considering the mobile-friendly nature of the software you use, whether these documents or these apps can be accessed on mobile phones as well as laptops and computers. Also making all online content, or as much as possible, downloadable for offline devices so that they can access them at home if they don't have a stable Wi-Fi connection. And also, maybe even reconsidering homework policies. It's understandable to be strict on late work, but some students who may not have Wi-Fi access 24/7 throughout the day, who have much less time to work on assignments, could really use the extra time provided to them. And we can learn more about our students by reaching out and conducting these surveys and learning more about our students as individuals, so we can better address them on a sort of case-by-case individual basis.
So those are really good solutions that individual teachers can enact today. But then we also want to look for more longer term solutions that would have to be enacted on a greater scale, on a national or a statewide scale. So both the Harvard Political Review and Edutopia agree that the best way to ensure equitable access to technology is expanding access at home. Bruce from the Harvard Political Review suggests that communities can achieve this by authorizing funds for technology bonds and grants through the school districts. Due to the increasing necessity of technology access during the COVID-19 pandemic, several communities have been developing their own solutions. According to Ms. Lee, Emblem Academy provided each student with a Chromebook to use at home during the pandemic. The Hatch Valley Public School District in New Mexico installed more antenna on 3 schools to increase the range of school Wi-Fi. The Los Angeles Unified School District partnered with PBS SoCal to run virtual learning through television channels, since more people have access to public broadcasting than to Wi-Fi. According to the California Department of Education, several internet service carriers, such as Comcast and Xfinity, were offering discounts on services and suspending late fees during the pandemic. Ms. Lee saw this in action with her own students at Emblem Academy. However, most of these solutions are merely stopgap solutions during the pandemic. To ensure lasting equitable access, more funds must be allocated to expanding at-home access for all students.
So after considering our own findings and some of the solutions as well as proposals that we presented ourselves, we'd love to hear from you all. We'd like you to have an opportunity to sort of reflect on your own classrooms and the role that technology plays in your own classes, and try to think about what you could do in your own classrooms.
So for our activity, we would like to know what are some of the materials and activities that you use or plan to use in your class that require technology? How do they rely on technology? And then we'd like for you to reflect on this presentation and your own teaching practices to figure out an example and make it accessible to students in underserved groups and to those who don't have access to technology. We've given you a couple of ideas to get started, and we'd love to know what it is that you think. In addition, we provided some other resources for anybody who's ready to start their journey on closing the digital equity gap. I particularly recommend Closing the Gap: Digital Equity Strategies for the K through 12 Classroom, as it is a paper book, which means that it's more easily accessible for a lot of people, and it provides different actionable items to help close this gap. Thank you so much, and we hope that you enjoyed this presentation.